Now I want to get on a soapbox a bit for something that's been gnawing at me recently when it comes to the conversation of NIL and transfer portal and how it affects Baylor, because I've heard a lot of people say it is going to create monopolies across college football that cannot be touched. And this only benefits the major schools like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, the ones we mentioned earlier. But let me say this. I know, I will say as a statement of fact that the NIL, the transfer portal, benefits Baylor far and away more than it benefits those big schools. And here's why. Nobody that I can, like, who's the last kid, right, that said, I'm going to Alabama or Texas A&M or Ohio State as a culture fit. I'm going to a university that's going to make me a better man. It's going to build me for the future. It's going to turn me into someone who's going to be a productive member of society. And they're so few and far between. And here's why. They are recruiting 5-star players. You're the number 10 overall player in the nation. And your first thought is, I'm going to go to Alabama. I'm going to go to LSU. I'm going to go to a big time program, step in and be a star on the nation's biggest stage. And then what do those players do? Due to the transfer portal, they will transfer out almost immediately because they don't want to redshirt. They don't want to ride the pine. They want to go somewhere they can play right away because they're not bought into a university. They're not bought into a culture. They're bought into me. It's an ego side of the sport that has a lot of big egos. What does Baylor do? They don't say, hey, Arch Manning, or hey, number 1, number 2 quarterback in the country who's a 5-star top 10 player. We want you to come to Baylor. They go find Austin Novosad, the number 402 player in the country, the number 22 quarterback in the state of Texas, and say, we want you. You're from Dripping Springs, right? When's the last time you thought, I'm going to go to a Dripping Springs game this Friday? No, people go to Allen, they go to Duncanville, they go to the big South Lake too. But Austin Novosad is this diamond in the rough type guy. And I'm using him as an example because I think it's so applicable that Baylor goes and finds him. He's a star at the Elite 11 in Dallas. He's going to be a star at the Elite 11 in Nashville too. And Baylor knew it. They said, we don't need Arch Manning in a loaded draft class or a loaded recruiting class. We want a guy who's going to buy in to our culture. Jalen Petrie. Okay. I know he's used as this example so often as the guy who stayed, but think about this. He didn't stay for Matt Rule. He didn't stay for Dave Aranda or Jim Grobe or Art Briles. Jalen Petrie stayed for Baylor. When do players do that? When do they buy into a culture so much that they decide to stay at a university that's going to make them a better person? It is so seldom, and the reason why is how many of these universities are strictly committed to making their players better people. So yes, you automatically, as Baylor University, shrink your recruiting pool so much when you say, do not come to this university if you're not committed to being the best you can be in every facet of life. And that's the best part of Baylor having that requirement of their recruits, because it shrinks it down to this list of players who are committed to a university. Baylor's had what? 3 scholarship players transfer out since last year. They are a 12-2 Big 12 champion who won the Sugar Bowl with a bunch of 3-star guys they built into 5-star caliber college athletes because they found the 3-star guys that were committed to culture. 3 guys have transferred out. Only one of them, I would say, would have been a contributor on next year's squad and at a position that's maybe underutilized in this offense that Coach Grimes and Dave Aranda throw out there. So really, of those 3 guys, you're thinking, dang, man, what is in the water? Why are these guys as a team, as a whole, so tight-knit and put together when the rest of college football is falling into shambles through the NIL as players transfer around the block? I can tell you this, you cannot. There's just no way. I've talked to too many athletes, too many coaches who have said it. There is no way to bring in a group of 20 elite transfers and win a national championship, because when the mesh is not there, when you don't have the chemistry, how do you build? How do you sustain? You just can't. But when you're Dave Aranda and you say, I don't care if you're a 3-star, I don't care if you're not on anybody else's radar, or if I'm crazy for coming after you and giving you an offer, I'm going to do it. Because I know you have the potential and you're committed. Austin Novosad, guess who's saying his name on ESPN? Nobody. There are flipping documentaries about Arch Manning already. Dave Aranda doesn't want that. Dave Aranda doesn't want a documentary about himself. He wants to find the guy who is building a career to have documentaries, not a guy who had documentaries day one. And that is the foundation of Baylor, not just Dave Aranda or Matt Rule or Jim Grobe or Art Briles or whoever you want to throw out there. It's the university as a whole. That's why a guy like Jalen Petrie stayed on that. People say too, like at Baylor, it's the small private Baptist college. You can't get millions of dollars in NIL deals. And they're right. You're exactly right. But do you want the guy who wants $2 million in NIL deals? Do you want the player at Baylor University who just signed a $2 million contract with Nike? Here's why I say no, because they haven't had that, and they've been more than fine. How many guys last year were signing $1 million NIL deals? How many? Get your calculator out. It's zero. It's zero. But Baylor still, unlike a Nebraska or an LSU or a Clemson, Ohio State, Baylor still won 12 games, went to the Sugar Bowl, and beat the crap out of Ole Miss in New Orleans in front of 70,000 fans without $1 million guys. And the reason why they did that is because they didn't have $1 million guys. They had guys who put it all out on the field for their university, for their culture, for their coaching staff, for each other. And that's what Baylor's going for. That's what's going to help Baylor in the age of NIL and in the age of the transfer portal, is because while everybody else, 20 guys, are transferring out of these major programs, nobody's leaving Baylor, okay? And in the age of the NIL, people at Baylor are not staying at a university, playing at a university specifically to get money. You can make money through the NIL at Baylor. Yes. Can you make millions? Probably not. But that's the point. These guys are not here just to make money while playing college football. They are here to play college football for a bigger cause than themselves, and that is Baylor. That's what sets Baylor apart. That's the reason why the NIL, the transfer portal, benefit Baylor. And you may think I'm wrong. You may give pushback, but I'll say this. It is objectively correct when you look at the win column last season and see 12-2 from Dave Aranda and what he put together. Players aren't transferring out. They're transferring in to be a part of what Dave Aranda is doing, and that is how you build a culture that lasts. That is how you institute longevity, is consistency in keeping guys in-house because they want you. Your players can't want money. They can't want NFL draft stock. They can't want to just up their status. They can't want their ego at the forefront. They have to want you as a university and to make a team better. And that's what Baylor recruits. They are weeding out the players who put their ego first. And that is why Baylor wins in the NIL and the transfer portal era of college football. Whew. All right. Deep breath. Yeah. Rein it in. Deep breath. It's been eating away at me. It's been eating away at me for the people that say this is going to kill and bury Baylor, because it's not. It's not. Oh,